fire decided it might do that recently. Fortunately, it changed its mind, but it came damn close. It said, I want that house. I want to turn it into little ashes. What do I have that cannot be taken from me? I don't even have a right to be alive. That's really easy to take away, isn't it? About all you need is a heavy object and a little bit of stealth. This whole game of sticking up for rights is just a very unpleasant, obnoxious thing to do. And it's not true. I don't have a right to a job. I don't have a right to get paid a certain amount of money. I don't have a right to anything. Except some things that apparently I could care less about, which is very interesting. The only rights I have ever found, nobody wants. I have a right to feel any way I like. And there's nothing you can do about it. I have a right when you come up and scream and yell at me to get me to do the right thing and stop disturbing you, to feel perfectly peaceful about the whole thing. And there's nothing you can do about it, even though you are trying really hard, aren't you? To get me to feel a different way and get all upset and do your will because you have a right for me to do that. But you're wrong. I have a right to feel about it any way I like. I have a right to decide to love you while you scream and yell at me and take no offense whatsoever and add no accounts to my little book. There's nothing you can do about it, is there? You cannot take that from me. Except we don't want that right. We don't want the right to freely experience everything any way that we choose. We want the right to make it be non-disturbing, don't we? And you don't have that right. So you end up getting in a fight. They disturbed you, and now you try to disturb them back, and we see who wins. But as far as I can tell, those are the kinds of rights I actually have. Ones that nobody wants, so they don't even know they're there. I have a right to determine my own state of being, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I don't have to go around telling people I have that right. I don't have to defend it. I don't have to stick up for it. I don't have to do any of this number 2 stuff. Because it ends with, I have rights, and I must stick up for my rights, because people keep trying to take them away. So I got to defend them. I got to fight for them. I got to go get them. I got to make, see, I don't have to do that with any of the things that I actually have a right to. I am well aware that you don't like the fact that I have a right to that, because you think you have a right to determine my state of being, don't you? And we all agree to that. We do believe that. You make me mad. I don't do it. You make me. And then you go on to the little list we talked about yesterday, because you did this bad thing to me. You changed my state into something I didn't like. You hurt me. You made me sad. You made me this. We don't want that right. And if you do take it, you'll probably tick folks off, because they want that power. They want that power to make you feel a certain way. And it's really annoying to them that you have the ability to determine your state and they don't have the ability to determine their state. They don't think that's fair. And they will happily beat you up. How come you can do that? How come you can just sit there and be okay with me being so upset? Don't you care about me? Yes, but I care about me more. That's number 2. All those rights that I have. I have the right to disturb you until you change and stop disturbing me. I have the right to do that. I have the right to tell you how to live your life. Because see, if you don't live my way, then you will be disturbing me, and I have a right to be non-disturbed. The list just goes on forever. The number of rights that a person has, it makes most people just quite obnoxious to be around. Every time you turn around, they got another damn right that you got to deal with. Probably about lunchtime, huh? This all becomes a personality. Let me just wrap this up so we can take a break, okay? This is what we are identified with as being me. Each one of these decisions gets made over and over and over again, so there's not one of these in the awareness. There's a whole family of complainers that all do it different ways about different things. There's a whole slew of rights and ways to stick up for them. And these decisions eventually become what we call not I's. Little voices that pretend to be me and tell me what they think the thoughts that I call mine. All those thoughts begin with I. And if one is willing to do observation, one discovers that everything going on in the head, no matter how complicated it seems, no matter how obfuscated it gets, no matter how unapparent it is, in other words, is always boiling back down to one of these 6 things we're going to put on this picture again. It's either a complaint, it's either a right, or it's a way to try to con and manipulate other people into giving me what I want by pleasing them, and so on and so on. And all that's going on in this thing that I'm so convinced is me is a bunch of dead ideas that I had in childhood replaying themselves over and over and over again in their attempt to make life non-disturbing. It has nothing to do with me at all. That is not me. I am the spirit. I could have been aware of all of this and chosen the way that I want to live instead of having it dictated to me by a bunch of silly old men and now a few silly old women sitting in a state a few thousand miles over there and determining that they know how life ought to be. Because after all, I asked them to. I had the choice of what silly old man or woman will do that. And now I got to conform to this. I don't get to choose. I get to pick a way through what they left me as an option. I don't get to be a sovereign spirit anymore. That determines what's going on in here, the state that I am in, determines what I will know and not know, understand and not understand, and what I will do with this life. First it was usurped by these folks on the inside, and then we happily gave it away to everyone around us. As long as they will provide us with the hope of non-disturbance, I will gladly be enslaved. Any questions or comments? Sounds like a geriatric ward. Got to admit, I've been doing my share of hacking too. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's take a break.
Push-ups had a very swift.
Okay, we'll finish it then. He's got tapes.
Yeah. Oh, we might have. I mean, I'm not suggesting that.
I lost the attention of the person that asked me to do the picture. Well, that I told I would do the picture. Man, they didn't really ask. I shoved it down their throat. So we can either continue with the picture of man or just drop it all together, whichever you prefer. Do you want to finish this? Is it useful to you? Because it'll be useful to everybody if I finish it.
I never tire of hearing it myself.
Okay.
Every time we hear it, I hear something new.
I would hope so. On the day when that's
something completely different.
on the day when that stops, you will probably have gotten this, and you won't need to come back to these stupid frigging meetings anymore. I remember that event very clearly. First workshop I went to, and I sat through the whole thing and said, so?
No.
And I stopped going after that. The teacher was now inside. It was life. I'd gotten what I came to get. That day does come, thank goodness. It hasn't arrived yet, that's fine. At one particular workshop that I went to, I was, kind of one of the new people in those days, but there are a lot of people who've been around for a decade or so. Man who taught me never got near as crotchety as I do. But he was in a crotchety mood that day. So he gave this talk on an interesting little section of the Bible that showed that one of the greatest prophets before Christ was just like completely wrong about everything that was going on as far as the outcome of talking to folks. Something that's probably good for Phil to remember, because he was just like Phil. Doom and gloom, it's not working at all. Why are we even bothering to do this? And X said, boy, are you wrong. And pointed out a whole lot of things. And Bob sort of summed it up with, you do realize that all of you who keep coming back here, you're coming back because you didn't get it. And that if you got it, you just wouldn't come back here anymore because you got what you came to get and there's nothing left to do. And I was sitting there in the chair as I urge you folks to do when something has nothing to do with you. And I sat there and said, yeah, what's your point? You're right. So? But I realized that he was talking to a lot of people who had been coming back to get it for 10 or 15 years. And there is a certain point where if you were coming to get it and you ain't got it, you probably aren't going to. I think that was the point he was trying to make. But it was, I do urge you to understand that a lot of times the person is speaking to most of the folks in the room and it has nothing to do with you. You can be a little patient, can't you, while they talk to them? And that's what I did on that particular instance and said, yes, you're right. That is certainly the case. For me, I haven't gotten it yet, and that's why I'm here, and I'm planning on coming back till I do. So what? You want to get crotchety about it, feel free. But I do remember that. I do remember the particular time when I went and I heard it, and there was nothing in it that was new. And I said, okay, I got it. I'm out of here. Until that happens, I would expect that would be the case. Every time, it's one of the beauties of symbols, okay? Is that every time you look at them, you see a new relationship in them. If a symbol is good, that's the way it works. So we'll move on to lovely decision 3. A great gift. Because without decision 3, this would be all that would ever happen to you unless you were extraordinary enough to realize something was wrong. 3 is a great gift. It took a number of incredibly wise people to come up with this one, and some of and 4 as well, in order to create enough internal turmoil and misery and suffering for human beings that they would look for a way out. Unfortunately, people tend to, a lot of them anyway, glorify these and say 3 is the good one and 1 and 2 are the bad ones and so on. But it just isn't so. They're all goofy. But what happens next is that if you leave a person at this, there would be no inner conflict. There would be no inner turmoil. They would happily just be a barbarian. You want something, you have a right to it, take it. If anyone objects, kill them. That would be the world that we lived in. What we consider to have finally civilized ourselves past, isn't that right? We don't live in this horrible, bad old days where the strong just took what they wanted and became royalty somehow, as people said last night, and then claimed it was blood lineage and so on. Oh, we don't live in those horrible old days. Yeah, well, that's because some people came up with the idea of making authorities who would make you miserable because you don't do the right thing, and with trying to convince you that you should please something greater than yourself, just as you do on the inside when it's mom and dad. So we began a process that we now take for granted, but required considerable expenditure of time and energy to come up with in the first place, of socialization. And we tell this little brat that it can't have its way all the time, and that it doesn't have rights, I do. And it better do what I want if it wants to be non-disturbed. So we start disturbing that little kid until it does what I want. It makes a third decision that I must please others to get my way. Now you can see how religion uses this idea, can't you? They say, you've got to please God to get what you want. And if you're not getting what you want, even here in the physical, material world, well, God must be pissed at you. He don't like you. And they turn this stupid, ridiculous idea into some kind of religious holy thing. So a lot of people really, by decision number 3 is the way to live, have turned it into either what a great religious person they are, or what a noble, self-sacrificing person they are. And they get quite disturbed when it's suggested that it's just as dumb as all the rest of these. But it is. Because of the last part of this sentence. I'm not pleasing you to please you. I'm pleasing you to manipulate you and con you and connive to get you to change. Now, it is really no different than this, is it? One says, I will make you miserable until you do what I want. Doesn't it? I will just sit here and make your life horrible. Making noise and telling you how bad everything is because of you until you do it. 2 says, I'm going to force you. And 3 says, I'm going to manipulate you. But it's all for the same purpose. To give me the power to get rid of things that disturb me. This one may be a little more pleasant to deal with, okay? Until, of course, you finally get to the point where the person trying to please you to get their way gets fed up because it's not working, and then they revert to the other side. Then it's not quite so pleasant anymore, huh? And that is usually what happens sooner or later, isn't it? I've done all these things for you all these years, and you still won't give me what I want, and now you owe me big time. It pretty much always comes down to that sooner or later, doesn't it? But this is another one of the unconscious behaviors that we pull off all the time. Like I say, we rarely say the whole sentence in our head. I'm going to give them this. We don't say why. And we feel very noble for doing it, very good about ourselves. But the interesting side effect of doing that is that we now have a problem. I have 2 ways of getting what I want, and they conflict. You see, if I please you to get my way, then I'm not doing what I want, I'm doing what you want. And that's what this side says. This side says I should do what I want to do all the time. And I should have things my way all the time. And then this side comes along and says, yes, but if you do that, You'll just upset everybody, and then you'll never be non-disturbed. You should do what they want. So I'm now in inner conflict. So we have this lovely setup where I have made life into a struggle. A struggle to achieve a permanent state of non-disturbance. And now life is a conflict. What a fun way to live, huh? Struggle and conflict. And this basically manifests inside of the mind that I'm completely identified with as a constant, unending inability to make a decision about anything, because every single thing there is to make a decision about, I have conflicting ideas on the subject. I've always got a yes, but. As long as one of these not eyes pops up about something that I haven't put too much importance on, that I do the right thing and says, complain and get your way, fine, I just act out complaining and everything's hunky-dory, as long as nobody makes a scene about it. And then, of course, if they get upset that I'm complaining, then I go into conflict about it, don't I? And I have to defend self and all that sort of stuff, or the other way around. If this one is the only one that says anything, then I try to do something nice for you. It's fine, I'm not in conflict. I think it's the right thing to do. I feel good about myself because I did this nice thing. And everything's hunky-dory. Until, of course, I realize that I didn't get what I wanted, and then I go into conflict about it. But when there is any event that I put a lot of value on, that I think is important, because that's the way we usually put value on things, isn't it? We say, this is an important decision. Well, this will affect the rest of my life. Well, which one didn't? The decision whether to turn left or right down some street affects the rest of your life, doesn't it? Will you ever be able to go back and undo that turn? Go the other way? No, it's too late. If you do, and go to see what's on the left-hand side, it won't be what would have been there 3 years ago, would it? Every decision does that. It affects the rest of your life. It's just that some of them you decide to make a big deal out of that fact. This one's important. And anytime you do that, you're in trouble now, because you can't make the decision anymore, can you? One side jumps up and says, you've got to do it this way. You've got to please them. You've got to do the right thing. And the other side says, yeah, but what about me? What about my rights? What about what I want? And now you can't decide what to do. That's our life. We've always got something like that in life, don't we? How much time do you go between conflicts over decisions? I bet you have a number every day, don't you? And a bunch of them that there was no inner conflict because you didn't put that big a deal on it, so you just identified with whatever not I told you what to do about it. But any time you decide that this one has some importance in your life, you can't make up the mind, can you? Kind of the way it works, huh? And then you go running off looking for advice. Somebody just did that today. And I just flat out said, I cannot advise you on this. I just can't do it. I don't know any more than you do what would be the right thing to do in this circumstance. I just don't know. So this time you're just going to have to figure out some other way to end the inner conflict, because I can't do it in this particular case for you. I just can't do it. I don't know. This one is important. And of course it isn't. Just isn't. Nothing's important here. It matters to you. That's fine. You're welcome to put whatever value you want on the experience. That's fine. But don't play this game that this one's important. It isn't. And you cannot know the right thing to do in advance. You just can't do it. Because that means you got to know the future. You got to know the outcome in order to know the right thing to do, and that's impossible. It's just impossible to know what will come of it. Either way. That's the game that we end up playing, this hellish game. That I've got to get non-disturbance. In order to get non-disturbance, I've got to know the future. So I've got to be able to figure out what the right thing to do is, and I have conflicting ideas on what's right. They're all equally true to me, because when I made the decision, each one was absolutely true. And I get stuck in that memory of having realized this is the right way to do things. They disagree. We give all kinds of weird names to what is really just a state of being identified with liars who all claim that they know the right thing to do, and not a one of them does. Well, they argue about which one to believe. We call that making a decision. And as we all know, if you just make it important what restaurant to go to, we'll never get there, will we? Because we invoke all of this about a simple thing like, where do you want to eat? Just make it an important event, huh? Eating? And good luck. I hope you get to the restaurant sometime soon. We even had to institute a whole profession in the world just to deal with this, called salesman. That is the job of salesman, to get you to make up your mind. Every time you go to the store, almost, once in a great while, you actually go there knowing what you want, and you just go in and get it. Isn't that right? But most of the time you go to the store and you don't already know what you want, and you get there and they got two choices for everything, don't they? At least. And you stand there saying, oh, which one should I buy? And somebody's got to come up in order for the company to make any money at all and convince you to buy that one. Now, is that one better? Who knows? But they got to get you to make a decision, or you'd stand there and stew about it all day long and then walk out with nothing, and the company would go broke and nobody'd be able to get paid and nobody'd have any money to not buy anything tomorrow. Isn't that about right? And we had to create this whole profession just because of the fact that human beings walk around in this weird state of inner conflict all the time. And then, of course, we hate them because they get us to make a decision, but if it doesn't turn out to be the right one, then we hate them and call them these nasty people who would sell anything. Although I do remember a time when I saw a mug in a store that just caught my fancy. It said, "Trust me, I'm a doctor." So I bought it and gave it to a doctor friend of mine, and he looked at it and just started chuckling away, and then he said, "That's sort of like saying, 'Trust me, I'm a used car salesman, isn't it?'" And I said, "Yeah, that was exactly what I thought when I bought it for you." That's the epitome in our eyes, isn't it? The used car salesman, they always tell you that it's a great car and who knows whether it is or not. But that's their job, get you to make up your mind. It's very hard for you to do. Heck, look at all the people who have that job. Psychologists, politicians, priests. All these people, half their job, what is it except to get other people to get out of conflict, huh? I kind of like the teaching's way of getting out of conflict. How about if I begin to observe this personality that has been built based on inner turmoil with conflicting ideas about how to get what I want. And I start to observe it and understand that it is actually a very simple thing. It seems complex because each one of these is a legion. There's not one way of pleasing in me. There's many, many, and even within pleasing, there are conflicts, aren't there? So one will say, please this way, and you're agreed on the fact that that's what you need to do, is please them. But then another one says, no, when you please people that way, it don't work. You got to do it this way. So there's even conflict inside of one little group of eyes that all agree on the basic premise of what you ought to do. Huh? Now you got to pick the right way to please them. Because it'll say, you know, we've tried to please them in the past and nothing we seem to do works. They just won't be pleased by anything we do, so we got to come up with a good way of pleasing them this time. Then in order to control you in society a little bit more, some people convince you to make another decision that I must believe and do as my authorities tell me to get my way. This one I find particularly humorous. As I remember when they got me to make this decision, I fought it a tad. The first three I didn't fight at all. But yeah.
I'm sorry to stop you. I just thought there was an incomplete thought. To get out of conflict, observe the personality. You say it's actually quite simple. The teaching's way to get out of conflict is just to observe.
Is to observe it. You're right. I didn't quite finish that. Disidentify from it. And I'll make the decisions myself, thank you very much. I really don't need a damn machine doing it for me. Because I'm willing to accept that I don't know the right thing to do, so I don't try anymore. And I can do something that that machine cannot do. I can just become such a good and accurate awareness function that I simply describe what is going on very clearly, as I recommended somebody earlier. Goodness gracious. Saw us all, everybody jotting down like it was this novel idea. Okay, there's this strange experience going on. I don't know what it's about, but it's uncomfortable. Well, uncomfortable experiences tend to be telling me that something needs to be done that's being left undone. Kind of what an uncomfortable experience often is. And I said, why don't you just describe it to life as accurately as you can, say this is what I'm experiencing, it don't make sense to me, and say, have at it. Go ahead and do something about it, I don't know what to do. I can do that. The not-I's can't do that, can they? They always have to know what is the right thing to do. I don't know what's the right thing to do, but I don't care. Because I can just tell X about it and let him do something. He's a lot smarter than I am. The conflict's over. I don't know what the right thing to do is, and I don't care. In fact, I don't even always know what to do, and I don't care. But to go back to this one, and like I say, I remember when they tried to convince me to believe in authorities, okay? That's the first one that I put up a little resistance to. Not a whole lot. They won pretty fast. It disturbed me royally until I went along with it. But I do remember very clearly, which you probably don't do because you didn't fight it, unless you did fight it. But I remember very clearly that what I was supposed to decide was that these people somehow knew more than I did about life and how to get what you want out of life. And if I would just do what they said, I'd be happy. I'd get non-disturbance. And I remember looking at him and saying, "You are the most miserable people I've ever seen. Why should I believe that you know anything more about happiness than I do?" I remember sitting in the principal's office one day saying, "You look miserable. And you want me to do what you say? Why, so I can be just as miserable as you are someday?" But that's the game. There are authorities out there. They sell you this idea that somehow they know more about getting non-disturbance than you do. And if you would just do what they say and believe what they say, you'd be okay. And we all pretty much buy that one hook, line, and sinker and start getting all sorts of authorities in our lives that we just got to believe what they say and do it, and maybe even shove it down everybody else's throat because it's the right way to do things, you know. And then the world will be a lovely place. We'll all be happy and non-disturbed. So now we got a zillion authorities in the head, huh? This next one I put up a little resistance to as well. But I just couldn't see a way around it. 3 and 4 are pretty much, we're kind of coerced into making those two, aren't we? By outside. The rest of them we pretty much do on our own. Although this one, as I say, I did fight. I did not want to believe this, but I couldn't see any way around it. And that one pretty much says, I am a mess. I've been trying to get non-disturbance now for years, and it seems like every day I get a little bit further away from being non-disturbed. I'm getting more and more upset as time goes on. There must be something wrong here. And since I cannot question the purpose of living, because I don't remember what the purpose of living is anymore, that goes unconscious so fast, it's unbelievable. I can't question that. But I have to figure out what's wrong. And the truth is, what's wrong is that I'm being an idiot and trying to get non-disturbance on a planet where it don't exist. That's it. That's what's wrong. But I can't do that. So I question me. And I decide that there's something wrong with me. And I'm going to have to figure out how to be different. These decisions can work pretty good together, and the other side's decisions can work pretty good together, but they're always the conflict between the two of them, you see. After all, I can go out and find an authority to tell me how I ought to be different, huh? And then 4 and 5 can work together. 4 can quote that authority back at me all the time while 5 tries to act it out.
Question.
Yes, sir.
This is probably a joke question, but
Probably what question?
this is probably a joke question, but
Oh, okay.
if
Get ready to laugh.
if you so are successful people who just pick one side and don't have conflict in a
Well, nobody, no,
secular
I
sense?
don't think anybody ever gets to that point where they have no conflict, okay? But, yeah, the the practices that are designed to make you successful in the world are to weaken one side and strengthen the other so there is less conflict, yes. Absolutely. We have 2 primary ways of doing that these days. One is religion and the other is psychology. Religion strengthens this and weakens this to at least lessen the conflict, and psychology does precisely the opposite. It strengthens this and weakens this. Yeah, the less conflict you're in, probably the more successful you are in the world. Absolutely.
in a secular sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure anybody ever, I've never seen anybody who actually gets to the point where there's no inner conflict, okay? And I've seen some pretty successful people on both sides of the fence, both in the money-making sense and successful in other fields of endeavor, okay? And I've never met one of them yet that had no conflict. But they sure had less than others, yeah. Yep. Folks I knew that had made a lot of money, it's why they call it swimming with the sharks. Because they could just ruin your life completely and then go have a good meal and a nice lay and go to bed, and it didn't seem to bother them one bit. No conflict about it. Number 3 never, ever, ever jumped up and said, look what you did. Nor did 4, okay. On that particular subject, they had no conflict. But boy, watch them try and make a decision about what property to buy next. And they still need salespeople to help get them to make a decision about how to continue being successful, most of them. And wait till they get home and their wife bitches that there's no money to buy furniture. Here they are, the wealthiest. That's an actual experience I had. I knew this one man, talk about money up the yin-yang, okay, whatever a yin-yang is. And his wife was just constantly complaining to him and me and everybody in sight that he wouldn't even give her that's all she wanted, $15,000 to do a little decorating around the house. And even to me, $15,000 isn't all that much money, and I'm not rich, but if I really wanted the house decorated, I think I'd swing 15 grand over a period of time if necessary, all right? When she told me the amount, my mouth just fell open. That must be chump change to this guy. So, you know, every night he'd have to go home and listen to that and have his own little conflicts over it, which I'm sure happened. I don't think anybody ever ends conflict. That is basically the teaching of the world. You can lessen inner conflict, but it is impossible to ever end it. You find anything in the world that teaches that ending turmoil and inner conflict is possible, and I would like to see it. I really would. I've never encountered that. They all teach you ways to lessen it.
I was talking to this friend of mine in England who sells houses, and I said, what do you do? I said, do you get them out of conflict? He says, oh, yes. I said, how do you do it? He said, the main thing he does is he tells them somebody else is going to buy it. If you don't, it's going to go. Does that make the hypothetical buyer an authority as well?
No, that invokes possessiveness. It invokes possessiveness, for one thing, and gets that greed going, okay, which they've apparently forgotten about in the midst of the conflict, and makes one of the most powerful suggestions you can use as a salesman. Tell a person they're stupid if they don't buy it. One of the most powerful things you can do as a salesman is to make the suggestion that they would be a fool or somehow look ridiculous if they don't do this. It's tough to do. You got to find, because you can't come out and say it directly most of the time, but that's the gist of it. Oh, I must be really stupid that I can't see how desirable this is. Everybody else does. Okay. And with the onset of adolescence, all those nice little hormones lead us to see life a slightly different way and we make a new decision. Which is, I was wrong when I made decision 5. I got to go back to the inner conflict again. It actually isn't my fault that things are all messed up. It's you guys. It's your fault that I'm unhappy. It's either you or, as Eddie would happily tell us, circumstances. He is the epitome of number 6. Why did I have to be born in a war zone? Nobody else had to. It just isn't right. Who put me in a war zone? It includes circumstances, and we decide that everything but me should be different. And thus begins our endless campaign of placing blame. But also completing the conflict. 5 says, look what a mess I am. 6 says, no, I'm fine. It's everything else that's a mess. And if I just get all those people to straighten up and fix the mess, I'll be happy.
Well, what is the obsession with fitting things into a rational framework? Is that
Power.
so? That's
Power to get your way, non-disturbance. If you can just understand it, you can control it. And that's what all of these are about, is an attempt to control circumstances so that I will no longer be disturbed. It's just that simple. It's another form of power. What the self is on an endless quest for. Each of these, as far as we're concerned, represents a tremendous power because it gives me the ability to control circumstances so they no longer disturb me. And for some, the belief that if I could just make sense out of everything and see how everything fits together, then I could control it. I could cause everything to go my way. And the interesting thing is that much of the time, This is weird, but it's still true. I actually believe that I've accomplished it if I just do it mentally. I don't even have to do it physically and actually achieve anything. If I can just get the mental job done, you see, that gives me the illusion that I've controlled things. And I'm okay with that until, of course, I find out that it hasn't physically happened and I get all upset and so on. But much of the quest for power ends up just being imaginary thought power. And we're okay with that. Any other questions, comments?
It's actually number 5, then, isn't it?
Say that
It's a
again.
version, that's a version of number 5.
Most of the time, yeah. Most of the people who are playing that game, it's 5
Right,
and actually doing the work with a little help from 4.
right.
Yeah. Any other questions and comments?
What about the thought that I'm better than this person or that person? Which not
Power.
is that?
Well, probably all of them. I'm sure one thinks it's a better complainer than everybody else. If you're a big complainer and you really believe that complaining is good and gets you your way, then all of them. And it's the power thing again. If I can decide that I'm superior to you, then I have somehow controlled you, at least by thought. And I do believe all of them do that. Okay, this body must go to the restroom, so let's take a break.